Yeah, yeah. Making her way to the mic. They start dimming the lights. You start feeling alright. From Birmingham, home of the Teddy Longs and the Ruben Studders. More once you discover. For all of the lovers, Whitney Houston and Roman Reigns. For all of the lovers, and Mickey James and Marvin Gaye. For all of the lovers, and Sasha Banks, Janelle Monáe, Silk, Sonic, and Paige. Allow me to say, look, I just found a place, sweet escape for every one of us. I was kinda late, so I just made it off the struggle bus. Walking by the fate, cause I know it's right in front of us. Yo, I ain't with the hate, gotta focus on what's great. Ladies and gentlemen, Steph Hardy is on the air. Had to drop a couple bars just to make you all aware. So, sit back, relax, enjoy the show. You know I go by Joe or the rest of the flow, yeah. Yeah. Making her way to the mic. They start dimming.
Y'all almost got a twofer. Oh my God, technology. Hey, y'all. Welcome to this new episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl, Stephanie Hardy, host and creator, host and writer for Women's Wrestling Talk, and color commentator for the Belladonna Division, Battle Club Pro, Black Girl Magic 2022, and soon to be Spartan Wrestling. It is so good to be back. Of course, if you do follow me on social media, if you don't, what are you waiting for? Please do that. You saw my announcement saying that I was going on hiatus because I was juggling a whole lot of things in my life. But now I'm back from hiatus simply because now I have some more free time on my hands. And I'm so glad to be doing this show now because there are things that I do want to say and talk about when it comes to this beautiful and fabulous world of professional wrestling. But, it's just you go through life's changes, but you do have to roll with the punches to get to what's real in your life. And I am so happy that I am able to come back and do this show and be able to talk about what's going on in a happy and healthy way. So for those who are new to the show, welcome to the ride, welcome to the vibe. And I hope that you continue to be on this journey with me. And for those who have been faithful to the show, over the past 3 years, thank you guys so much for being supportive of this wrestling platform and for being supportive of me and all of my endeavors when it comes to wrestling and just being supportive and positive in all things. Thank you guys so much for supporting me in everything. And now we got to get into a whole lot of mess. Not really a whole lot of mess, but enough mess to let you know that a lot of crazy stuff is going on in the world of professional wrestling. But of course, if you are watching live, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, or wherever, feel free to light up the comments, and also on YouTube as well. Thank you for watching. Light up the comments as well as I get to different subjects and talk about different things. And you might wind up on the screen, and you might, of course, wind up in the recording that will be going up soon. So yeah, of course, now that we are headed into SummerSlam season, there is so much to talk about with news and so many different things that you hear, like with word on the street and rumors. So we are here to get started with news and gossipish. And of course, we have to start with Mr. CEO and chairman himself, Vince McMahon. Now, news came out today, like early this morning, that WWE had, of course, disclosed that Vince McMahon was subpoenaed on July 17th from WWE's Q10 quarterly report filed with the SEC. They said, as previously disclosed on June 17th, 2022, a special committee of the board on the board of directors was formed on June 15th, 2022 to investigate allegations of misconduct by Vince McMahon. As previously disclosed, the special committee investigation was completed during the fourth quarter of 2022. However, related government investigations remain ongoing. Like they're continuing these, they're really continuing these various allegations against him. Like, it's going on. Like, and today, and they announced that federal law enforcement agents executed a search warrant and served a federal grand jury subpoena on Mr. McMahon, and no charges have been brought in these investigations. Now, they also said that the company has received voluntary and compulsory legal demands for documents, including from federal law enforcement and regulatory agencies concerning the investigation and related subject matters. And seemingly, the subpoena and search are related to the various NDA payments and payments to Donald Trump for TV performances that were improperly not recorded as company expenses. And this message was sent today via WWE and the quarterly report to the SEC. Now, this is really interesting coming out of everything that we went through in the last year. Because, of course, last year you had a whole lot of drama going on. With him and so many allegations of possible sexual assault on women. And forgive me if I'm triggering anyone that's listening to this, but yeah, he had allegations of sexual assault, allegations of paying some of these women off for these affairs, and he wound up having to retire and step down as chairman and CEO of the board. But as it turns out, he wound up coming back, even while Triple H was in charge of creative and Stephanie McMahon was the co-CEO along with Nick Khan. He wound up coming back a little bit before, or a little bit after WrestleMania, and he wound up coming out on the news and talking about the merger that they were having with the UFC and stuff like that. So it was just a lot going on, but it seems like the legal troubles are not ending for Vince McMahon at this point. And it's just really interesting how this has all come out. And a lot of us wrestling fans are just watching and wondering, what is really going on? Like, what are they hiding? Is it possible that there's more skeletons in the closet? How is this going to affect the programming? But it's pretty clear that whenever there are legal problems going on with the company, it never really affects the goings on of our weekly programming with Raw, SmackDown, and NXT and all other stuff that's going on. So hopefully, of course, we will continue to follow it. I'll continue to follow it, on social media and see what's really going on with that situation. Because they also announced that Vince McMahon had undergone a spinal surgery and he is recovering, and he will be out in the near future to recover from that surgery. So we do wish him the best with that. But yeah, it seems like when it comes to legal issues, when it comes to the possible sexual assault allegations, the payments that are not supposed to be paid or not being reported, when it comes to the black woman who decided to sue WWE for how she was treated as a writer. It seems like sometimes when it rains, it pours when it comes to the legal stuff. But either way, it won't necessarily fully affect what we've got going on when it comes to our programming. So we have that happening. So also in the news, we have the colorful appearance of Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman appearing on ESPN's First Take with Stephen A. Smith and Molly Qerim. Now, if you do or do not watch ESPN First Take, you've probably heard of it. It is a sports show where they sort of debate about various goings on in the world of sports, whether it's mostly with football, basketball, baseball, all the regular other sports. But sometimes they'll throw a little wrestling in there. And because it's SummerSlam week, a lot of different WWE stars have been making appearances. So Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman pulled up to First Take. And as you can see, Stephen A. Smith is holding a replica title. He's really feeling himself. He really looked like he was having a fantastic time with both of them, as it seemed like they were in character, which is safe to assume. But there was some controversy dealing with some things that Paul Heyman said. When Stephen A. Smith asked the question of Paul Heyman, do you consider yourself the GOAT manager in all of professional wrestling? Paul Heyman answered by saying, yes, I'm the greatest of all time. And then Stephen A. Smith mentioned, well, what about Bobby the Brain Heenan? And Paul Heyman interjected and said, oh, well, he's dead. Nobody cares. And I'm just like, whoa. that was really rough. And then they also mentioned Jimmy Hart, the Mouth of the South, and he said something colorful about him as well. But what really, shook the table a lot for a lot of wrestling fans was the fact that Paul Heyman, just so callously bypassed Bobby the Brain Heenan, and seemed to do it just because he's dead. Yeah, Bobby the Brain Heenan may have passed away due to, complications with cancer, which was really sad. But you can't deny his impact when it comes to the world of professional wrestling. When he wasn't being a manager, he was a really great commentator alongside Gorilla Monsoon, and they were the best of friends. And he was a manager to a lot of great people like Classy Freddie Blassie and a lot of different other folks as well. So you can't really, bypass that just because, for now, Paul Heyman really is that dude. Because as of, he's been a manager for a lot of great names. He's, of course, a manager and the wise man to Roman Reigns. He's been a manager famously to Brock Lesnar. He's been the manager to, I believe, CM Punk at one point, and even Curtis Axel, and maybe even Cesaro, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, he's been a manager to a lot of great people. But you can't just bypass the people who came before you. Even though Paul Heyman has done it all and seen it all in this business, it was a little bit weird for me to hear him say, oh, well, he's dead, and just bypass that. But, hopefully he didn't mean that in a disrespectful way. Paul Heyman seems like a guy who really has a lot of love and respect for this business because, like I said, he's done a little bit of everything. Not only being a manager, but also a creator of his own company and just being in his regular insane self. So maybe he was just in character and just saying that. But because, like I said, throughout the interview, they seem to be in character most of the time. So here's hoping that Paul Heyman wasn't just being all crazy and brash, but at the same time, he is a great manager. He is a great storyteller and orator when it comes to wrestling, and I will give him his flowers while he can smell them. But maybe saying that, oh, Paul Heyman, or not Paul Heyman, but oh, Bobby Heenan is dead was just a little bit harsh. But yeah, I guess it's just kind of easy for him to go crazy like that because when you're next to Roman Reigns, you just sort of believe in yourself no matter what. So, Jesus, yeah. But yeah, that happened. Also, some more updates in the news. We have Rey Mysterio, who of course sustained an injury on this past episode of SmackDown when he had to fight his fellow brother in arms of the LWO, Santos Escobar, in the finals for who was going to become the number one contender for the United States Championship, currently being held by Austin Theory, if you may or may not have forgotten. So yeah, Rey Mysterio, while this beautiful match was taking place, he sustained an injury as Santos jumped out of the ring to hit a suicide dive onto him, and it seemed like he got sort of the wind knocked out of him a little bit, and he couldn't get back up, and then they went to commercial break, and then he came back and he could not continue with the rest of the match, so therefore Santos was made the winner, and now he will go on to face Austin Theory 2 weeks from now, I believe, on SmackDown. But yeah, he wasn't able to go on. So it's being reported by Dave Meltzer, who of course we do have to take with a grain of salt here on the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. Rey Mysterio is fine despite what happened. Now, of course, I did mention what happened in the match and how he sustained the injury. And Michael Cole and Wade Barrett were saying that Mysterio hit his head on the ground after taking the tope suicida. And according to PW Insider, the original plan was the match was to have Escobar win by pinfall to set him up as a challenger for the United States title. And he was still awarded the victory, and he will go on to face him on the August 11th episode of SmackDown. But it was good to see in a very surprising move that Rey Mysterio is doing fine and that he will be on the next episode of NXT next week to even up the odds as Dragon Lee faces off against his son, Dirty Dominic Mysterio, for the NXT North American title. So it seems that he's in good spirits and he is doing okay. He's not doing any in-ring work, but he will still be on screen. So big ups to Rey Mysterio, for, of course, taking that hit like a champ, and of course big ups to WWE for trying to keep him safe. and not trying to make him just go out there and just pretend like he's not hurt, and just still keeping him, relevant and on screen as much as he possibly can, and showing respect to this Hall of Famer, and even having him show up on NXT as his son runs roughshod everywhere, and hopefully he can teach him a lesson yet again like he did at WrestleMania. So we love Rey Mysterio here, so get well soon, and yeah, hopefully he'll be able to congratulate Santos Escobar later if he wins the United States title in a few weeks. I hope he does, but yeah. Also in the news, something interesting that took place was Cody Rhodes admitting that he could have had a dream match with Sting. Now, he mentioned in an interview with Connor Casey from comicbook.com that at one point in AEW, he was pitched to go one-on-one with the icon Sting. He said, quote, "I was going to wrestle Sting. I don't think I've ever shared that with anybody, and nothing on paper or anything like that. But I can say I got a tremendous offer from AEW creatively, financially, the full package. You won't hear me say anything bad about AEW or Tony Khan or my time there. It was a tremendous offer, but the offer wasn't right for me. What I wanted to get back to was the first goal that I ever had, which was winning the WWE championship. That's what I had but yeah, that probably would have been the end game. That's what had been discussed, was to get one match with one of my heroes, Sting. Now, they did have one interesting interaction not long after, Sting's debut, but nothing really came of it. But, of course, in the end, Cody Rhodes is now with WWE, and Sting still remains a part-time performer in AEW. And the last time I saw him on AEW programming, he had jumped off of a ladder and onto a table, which was really interesting to say the least, to see someone his age actually taking a splash like that. But he really took it in stride, and he did it. So big ups to Sting for that. And he's coming to Alabama Comic-Con next month. I'm really excited about that because he has come down here before for it. But it's really exciting to see him and the likes of Kevin Nash, Jamie Hayter, and so many other wrestling legends coming down for Alabama Comic-Con. But a match between him and Sting would have been absolutely incredible. But I almost feel like him and Sting would have had a better match, like, say, maybe if Cody had I feel like maybe if Cody had maybe stayed in WWE a little bit longer the first go round, when Sting came up and wanted to fight Seth Rollins or fight Triple H, that would have been fire. Like, if he had did that and they had a match with each other then, when Sting was like 100% healthy, then that would have been awesome. But, things happen, life happens, and you just can't predict stuff like that. But either way, a match between these two would have been interesting. Also, on the side note, if you haven't watched the Becoming Cody Rhodes documentary on Peacock, please watch it because it is so good. It was probably one of the best documentaries WWE has ever done on a singular star. And Cody's story is really a story that's worth listening to because it's a lot more than just him being Dusty Rhodes's, youngest son. Like, he really worked his way to get to where he is now. He wasn't just handed everything. So I hope that if you haven't watched it, please do. Like, please go ahead and watch it. And you can see what some of his motivations are to having done and made a lot of the choices that he wound up making, even though it kind of made us go like, huh? There's still a lot. Once you watch it, you will understand. So big ups to Cody Rhodes, the person who should very well be WWE champion right now, but I don't want to fight about that at this point. So I'll probably talk about that later. But either way, big ups to Cody and Sting for whatever it is that they're all doing at this point. And I believe not lastly, when it comes to AEW and their women's division, they were sort of held to the fire last week in something that did grab my attention. During the match that Taya Valkyrie was having with Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, they had a 10-minute match that a lot of people felt like wasn't necessarily as good as it could have been, or there were a lot of miscommunications involved or whatever. But I believe after the match, there was a woman in the audience who held up a sign that said, "Book the women's division better." And it caused a lot of controversy online because AEW actually held the camera onto the sign for a long period of time, as if maybe it was something that was either orchestrated or maybe it was something that they were still giving time to because they want to, hear out what the people or what the audience has to say. Maybe that was it, but either way, online this caused a lot of kerfuffle and a lot of discussion on women's divisions, not only in AEW but across the board and how they're being booked. Because a lot of people feel that in comparison to a lot of the men's programs in AEW, the women's programs really aren't, stretched out to be full, long, multifaceted stories the ways that the men's stories are. And honestly, they're right. They're really right because there was a time that I was watching AEW more consistently because I had to cover it for Women's Wrestling Talk on the SmackDown and Rampage after show when we were doing that show, where there would be stories involving Jade or stories involving, so many different women, and we would see them have like a one-off match, kind of like sort of like something to watch for the sake of the sport of it and not for the story of it. And we wouldn't see anything else from it. It would be like they'd move on to the next thing, to the next rivalry, to the next thing, to the next thing, as opposed to say someone like John Moxley, like a rivalry like John Moxley versus Hangman Adam Page. The women haven't really had a rivalry like that lately. And, you know, it's it's sad because for a company to have started, and said that they want stuff to be different and they want to be an alternative. And with Baker being sort of like the pillar of their women's division, you would think that they would have more in mind for their women's stories. Now, granted, they have done a lot when it comes to showcasing their women a bit more. And then you also throw in Ring of Honor in there with their Ring of Honor champion, Athena, who is arguably one of the most dominant champions in the past year. um there's still so much more that could be done to stretch the stories out and give them more meatier content like the men do. So I am glad that this is being talked about and hopefully changes can be made. Because for me, I'm always a person that's just saying, well, if you want to put these women out there, give them stories that are actually written from the perspective of women. Like, give women the opportunity to write these stories for these women instead of just having one man or a couple of men in a room at the helm, and, actually work together with the talent to create these stories that actually mean something that people will actually remember. And that's across the board, in all of wrestling, because I'm definitely not picking on anybody, but I'm just saying this simply because this is, AEW is where it took place. Because these women are amazing. They're talented. They have all of this charisma and personality. They should be given the amount of time that the men are given, equal time. So I really love that this fan actually had the wherewithal to make this sign and actually put it out there on television and be brave enough to share it on television too. Because sometimes, if you don't want to rock the boat and you don't want to be messy sometimes, but at the same time, sometimes it takes being a little messy to get your truth out there, to stand up for something. And I'm glad that this fan did that. And hopefully more changes can happen throughout all of wrestling, period, when it comes to the women. So this was really cool, and I just wanted to address that on my show, considering it did happen last week, but I still wanted to talk about it. And finally, in news and gossipish, Kayla Braxton, who is a media correspondent for WWE, announced that today was going to be her last day as the host of The Bump. Now, of course, WWE's The Bump is sort of like a sports show, kind of like Get Up and all the other shows you see on ESPN and the NFL Network and stuff, where they talk about wrestling and interview wrestlers in a very fun atmosphere and in a very goofy way and stuff like that. And she was on the show with Matt Camp and Ryan Popola, I believe. And this show started, I believe maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And it has grown to be something really cool and really, entertaining and engaging, even though it does come on in the middle of the day. And it's kind of hard, or at least it was hard for me, to watch it because, of course, I'd be at work and stuff. But just watching it grow into what it has been, it's just been amazing. But Kayla Braxton has now decided to step down as the host. She's still with WWE. And Megan Morant will be taking over as host of The Bump, and she will serve as a correspondent. And also, she will still do, I'm sure, her interview things on SmackDown, as well as serve anywhere else, like for pre-shows or stuff like that and stuff. So I saw that and I was just like, well, this is worth talking about because Kayla Braxton is just an amazing personality. Like, she's worked really hard to get to where she's at. Plus, I admire her, so much as, a fellow Black woman in this space and for what she's opened up, And then she's from Alabama, just like me, except she's from Wadley, Alabama. And I'm from Birmingham, so it's just kind of like, okay, I see you Black girl from Birmingham or from Alabama. I see you. We're doing the dang thing, and it's amazing. So Kayla is just someone that I kind of look up to and kind of love when it comes to just her skills and everything. And it's so different, the idea that she's so introverted but yet so extroverted on camera and stuff. So she's a really great journalist, and I hope that she continues to succeed, even though of course you might have a couple of idiots online who might try to bully her and say stupid stuff to her or whatever. Kayla's amazing, and we should definitely appreciate her while we have her in the space of wrestling. So yeah, big ups to Kayla Braxton for making this step for her life, and just hopefully she'll continue to do great things. So that's all for news and gossip-ish, and now we're going to move to a special segment. So in this special segment, I wanted to discuss something that happened Monday, which had a lot of people on fire. Now, of course, this weekend will be SummerSlam, which is the second biggest event of the year, or maybe you could argue the third biggest event of the year, because of course you got WrestleMania and you got the Royal Rumble, but it's definitely one of the big four pay-per-views. And something took place online during Raw that had a lot of people angry and upset, and I will admit it also had me a little bit upset too. Now, during the segment with Becky Lynch coming out and she cut her promo, this isn't the picture from when it happened, but either way, you get the point. It's involving these women. So Becky came out to cut a promo and stated that since she had won her match against Zoe Stark to be able to face Trish Stratus, I want to do this right now. Let's fight. And then Trish was like, yeah, I'm not going to fight you because these people don't deserve it and stuff. So, Adam Pearce decided to lay down the law and tell her, to go ahead and fight the match now. And so they went out there and the bell rang and they fought. But then Zoe Stark got involved immediately and started beating up on Becky, which basically caused basically a no contest, I guess you could say. And this left a lot of people confused and a lot of people angry because all of this just let us know that this match wasn't taking place at SummerSlam, because Adam Pearce would go on to announce that they would actually fight each other in 2 weeks on Raw, which would be taking place in Canada. And this set a lot of fires on social media and made a lot of people upset, because we were under the impression that with so many of these SummerSlam matches taking shape, right, that this would be one of them. It would be a very high profile match to have in a big four pay-per-view, but that doesn't seem to be the case. And it also doesn't seem to be the case for a lot of different women's programs for different situations. And I do understand why, but at the same time, it's still frustrating because as it stands, which I will get into in my SummerSlam predictions, there are 6 men's matches and only 2 women's matches for SummerSlam. Let that sink in for a minute. 2 women's matches and 6 men's matches. Just 2. Now, I know a lot of people might think, okay, well, maybe we should just be happy with the 2. Or maybe we should just be satisfied that we're getting this and not Nothing. But at the same time, when you have so many different programs and you have a program like this involving Becky Lynch, who was probably one of the most prolific stars when it comes to wrestling now, especially given from where she started, with the Four Horsewomen and stuff like that, rising up to give more credence to these women's stories and be a huge advocate for that, not getting anything for this SummerSlam, it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And then when you have Trish, who, you know, arguably or inarguably, depending on who you are, helped to, I guess, in a sense, revolutionize what it means to be a star in women's wrestling, even though during the time of which she was wrestling, the wrestling for the women wasn't exactly prioritized on a level that it is now. And you don't put them on SummerSlam, it's very questionable. These women have been building this story up ever since after WrestleMania and kept it going in such a consistent way that it kept us interested. And they're not having a match at SummerSlam? What? It's really, really dumb. It's really dumb. And I don't agree with it at all. There's a lot of people who don't agree with it. There are people who feel on social media who really feel like this is just a huge mistake. But it seems like WWE might be on the struggle bus a little bit when it comes to other storylines that could have been featured at SummerSlam as well. But I'm just going to go a little bit into it here. Um, we have the curious case of Rhea Ripley as the women's world champion. Of course, she's walking around with the faction known as the Judgment Day, which has Finn Balor, Damian Priest, Mr. Money in the Bank, and the new NXT North American champion, Dirty Dominic Mysterio, in it. She's been doing Dominic's bidding because they of course are an on-screen couple. And it's just like she's just been helping him out with all of his matches, distracting people and stuff, and even going as far as to clucking Wes Lee in the head in order for Dominic to win the North American title on NXT. But here's the thing. Since she has fought Natalya on Raw, she hasn't had anybody truly step to her as a challenger for that women's world title. It's been very, very strange. And then you have Raquel, who is in this picture, you know, getting into a brawl with her this past Monday. This is where everything happened. On this past Monday, they fought each other, but then Rhea decided to take advantage of her injured knee and saying and Adam Pearce told her, like, as soon as you are cleared, you will have a chance to fight Rhea Ripley for the title. And so it's looking like that's not happening on SummerSlam. And that was a shame to hear, because the one thing that people have been raring for ever since the both of these women got on the main roster is for the both of them to fight each other, simply because they're so evenly matched and they parallel to each other because they're both tall, they're both muscular, and they both are famous for beating each other's behind when it comes to NXT. They destroyed each other for the NXT women's title. So we want that replicated here, and now you have a chance to do it on a higher platform, but yet it's not happening on SummerSlam. What do you mean? It's really frustrating because Rhea here lately has been defending her title, you know, a little bit here and there, but then when it comes to her actually having a match booked, like, she'll go ahead and attack her opponent that she's supposed to fight, but then a match won't happen. And yeah, the match that she had with Natalya was really good. Like, it was fantastic, you know, for an episode of Raw. It was fantastic. But since then, we really haven't seen her fight anybody outside of also Lyra Valkyrie on NXT. That was a non-title match. And it's just disappointing because for her to have won the SmackDown women's title from Charlotte in such a beautiful match that happened in WrestleMania, you wouldn't know that she won this match in such dominant fashion by the way that she's just been carrying it like it's an accessory. And that's not right. This is a brand new women's title that's equal to the world heavyweight title. And when you have someone like Seth Rollins, who's been fighting back and forth with Finn Balor for that title and also keeping his head on a swivel because you got Damian Priest there, it makes no sense that Rhea Ripley hasn't been propositioned a newer opponent. And yes, you could argue that a lot of the other women might not be, you know, it might not grab you immediately, but at the same time, those women are still there and they deserve that opportunity, whether they win or lose. So her reign has just been, you know, weird for the most part. I won't say it's been absolutely bad because she still looks like a badass and she still looks dominant, when it comes to what she does and her presence in the Judgment Day. But when it comes to her fighting women, it just hasn't been happening. And the idea that this brawl happened on Raw and nothing came of it in terms of SummerSlam implications, it's just really disappointing. It's very, very disappointing. I really wish that there was more that we could give these women, more that we can give Rhea as a champion that's equal to the World Heavyweight title that matches with it. It just makes no sense. You would even think someone on NXT would probably try to challenge her for it. Because even Seth, he has fought Braun Breaker for that World Heavyweight title. Nobody is going to call out Rhea Ripley on NXT? Nobody? It's just strange, and I just don't like the way that that's turning out when it comes to the women and SummerSlam and just as a whole. But there's more to talk about. Yeah, let's get these two in a ring immediately, right now. Now, of course, one of the women's matches that is, but one out of the two for SummerSlam is Asuka versus Bianca Belair versus Charlotte Flair for the women's championship, which is technically the women's undisputed championship, but they never really call it that on television. But when they first brought it out, that was what they called it. But this match is booked, and I am thrilled to see these women, tear the house down because they're all so very gifted and wonderful in their beautiful ways. But the only thing that I have questions about when it comes to the way this match is being booked is the fact that it feels like Bianca and Charlotte are in a separate feud away from Asuka. These two women are basically the alpha women of our species here. You have Charlotte, who is a 14-time champion. And of course, whenever there's a new belt involved, she has to say, hey, I want it, because she's that championship girl. But then you have Bianca, who waited in line for her opportunity to fight against Asuka after she lost the Raw Women's title at Night of Champions. But then, of course, Charlotte jumps in the line in front of her and she doesn't appreciate it. And then they both had their opportunity at Asuka on SmackDown, but then they got messed out of their opportunity on SmackDown. So now this is where this triple threat match is taking place on Saturday. But you wouldn't know that they're both feuding with Asuka because they seem to only be focused on each other. Bianca has a problem with Charlotte because Charlotte seems to be undermining her and seems to be, well, okay, I'm the boss of the ring. I am the line, and you just need to know your place. But Bianca is just like, look, I don't have a place. You don't get to tell me what my place is because I'm the longest reigning champion of the modern era, and you will put some respect on my name. I have done a lot. And I was a fighting champion, while you were on vacay after WrestleMania. You don't get to do that to me. Now, of course, they have ire with each other, and I completely get that. But the idea that they are not taking Asuka into account with this is really strange. Asuka is the champion. Why isn't Asuka, running roughshod over both of these women, using the fact that these women seem to be so focused on each other that they can't even focus on Asuka? Why isn't she playing these mind games with them? And why does it seem like whenever she does want to get in their faces, it's always at the last minute or at the ninth hour? That's questionable for someone who's supposed to be the champion of SmackDown with that title. Here again, this is a new title, and you're not propositioning it well when your champion is only getting in the face of Miss Money in the Bank Io Sky and threatening her and telling her all the reasons why she shouldn't be cashing in. It's weird. It's really weird. You're only getting in their faces. You're only getting in Io's face, but not getting in the face of Charlotte, who did this to you on an episode of SmackDown, and also Bianca, who KOD'd you on the table with Charlotte. I hate it. I literally hate it. It's just so weird. And I know that this is supposed to be, the positive show, but I do have to be honest when it comes to when it comes to my women in wrestling not being given the correct or proper time, I have to address the things that bother me. And this is bothering me. It makes no sense for Asuka to be the afterthought in a feud where she's the champion. Asuka deserves so much better. It's almost like the Asuka from NXT that was undefeated for over 400 to 500 days and this Asuka are two totally different Asukas. And that's not fair. Like, what happened? Like, are y'all just trying to water her down? What's the deal? What's the problem? It shouldn't be this way. It really shouldn't. But I guess we'll have to see, how Saturday turns out or even how Friday turns out because SmackDown will be happening, of course, before that. But still, it shouldn't be Bianca versus Charlotte and then throw Asuka in there. It should be definitively Asuka versus Bianca versus Charlotte. That's what it should be. But, this is where we're at. And it's just disappointing. Then we have Bayley versus Shotzi. Now, of course, Bayley has now gotten the ire of Shotzi because she cut her hair unwarranted. And Shotzi didn't like that. And so she did get on camera and shave her head and tell Bayley, you're not the one in control. I am. And she's been playing mind games with her. Now, this is where the mind games do get interesting because I am glad that Shotzi is doing this and getting more television time with this feud with Bayley. But it does disappoint me that this isn't even on the SummerSlam card because we haven't seen Shotzi on television since she really shaved her head. Like, she's been dropping mind games here and there, cards saying, Bayley, I see you, or leaving her strands of green hair that she used to have. But at the same time, we haven't seen them fight from it. We haven't seen them have an encounter face to face from that action and from this buildup. And yes, you could argue that there hasn't been enough time to build it up for SummerSlam. But at the same time, we know that it's happening. So if you can throw stuff on the card just for the sake of throwing it, like that Battle Royal, you could throw this on there. Like, it makes no sense. Like, you could throw that match on there if you wanted to, because this has been building up. We have seen this. So what's the problem? Why aren't we seeing even this on the SummerSlam card? Like, these women are being paid dust, and it's not fair. I'm changing lights. It's not fair that these women just, aren't getting the time and aren't being highlighted on the SummerSlam card in this way. Like, it just makes no sense to me. But moving along, you also have the issue, the glaring issue that we keep bringing up. And I feel like I need to make the screen big for this one. The glaring issue of the women's tag team titles that are currently being held by Sonya Deville and Chelsea Green. This is an ongoing issue that Trinity and Mercedes tried to mention and talk about, but when they did try to mention and talk about it, folks didn't want to hear it. And of course, we are where we are now. But you have Sonya Deville and Chelsea Green win these titles off of Raquel and off of Liv due to the actions of Rhea Ripley, the women's world champion. They have these titles, and here again, they don't even have a match at SummerSlam. This tag team showcase match at WrestleMania, and they actually managed to stay together throughout all of the changes and stuff and wound up winning their first titles in WWE, which is commendable and amazing for the both of these women. Why aren't they on the SummerSlam card? Why aren't they on the SummerSlam card? That makes no sense. Are you punishing Chelsea because maybe she had her husband Matt Cardona pop up in the indies with a replica version of the women's title? What's going on? Is there an injury happening? How come these two women don't have a match at SummerSlam? Because by all means, there are other women that they could be feuding against. They could very well be feuding against Team Casey Squared, Kaden Carter and Katana Chance, because they did fight them before. And they did have a program with them online that we did see. But as far as television goes, yeah, they beat them one time, but they haven't had a feud with them at all since then. And we haven't seen them on television since then. They are the best tag team when it comes to the women's division in all of WWE. Bar none. They are the best women's tag team. They're an actual team. They're not just two single stars that were just thrown together. Like, these women are actually best friends. And if they had an opportunity to fight for those tag titles at SummerSlam, that would be cool. Why aren't they on the SummerSlam card? And then you also have Alba Fire and Isla Dawn. We haven't seen them since they lost the women's tag team titles. Well, the NXT women's tag team titles to Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey. We haven't seen them since. And they got drafted, and they were the champions when they got drafted from NXT. There is no excuse. The talent is there. The tag teams are there. Those are just two examples. It's like the talent is there. So why isn't that we haven't seen it when it comes to Sonya and Chelsea? Yes, you could argue that there is no time, but still, you've thrown together matches for less. You've thrown together men's matches for far less. And the idea that the champions, the women's tag team champions, don't even have a match is absolutely ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I would be highly upset. And I just feel sorry for these women because they're all just so talented. They're so charismatic. They have personalities that jump out at you on the television. But yet, there's something just continuously holding them back all the time. And it makes no sense. Second biggest event of the year. They're going to Detroit and only 2 women's matches. What's the deal? I thought we were evolving. What's the deal? But there's more that I have to address when it comes to the women. WWE added more pay-per-views or more PLEs to their schedule this year. One of them being Payback, which is taking place, I believe, Saturday, September the 2nd, the weekend of my birthday, as a matter of fact. That's taking place. They also added a Superstar Spectacle, which will be taking place Friday, September the 8th, and that's going to be in India. So shout out to India for getting a show. I know they're going to have tons of fun with that one because international crowds are just popping off for no reason. You know, they're having all the fun at the wrestling events that we're just so used to. So big ups to India for that. That's taking place in September. And then you even have Fastlane, which has been added to the schedule for October the 7th in Indianapolis. So they have all of these new pay-per-views that have been added to the schedule for this year before Survivor Series in Chicago. But the last I remember was that Fastlane was sort of like one of those pay-per-views that was set to be sort of like in the midway between Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. And then Payback was sort of like the substitute for Backlash, in a sense. That's kind of what it was. But they put Backlash back and they brought Fastlane and Payback back towards the end of the year. And then they added an India pay-per-view. For what exactly? Why? When, with all of these problems that you're having with your women's division on SummerSlam, you could very well bring back Evolution. And I know for those who follow me on social media, please follow me on Twitter at well, not Twitter, on X at Hardy WrestlePod and on Instagram at Hardy Wrestling Podcast. I talk about Evolution a lot because it was arguably one of the best pay-per-views I had ever seen in my life. And it was just really refreshing to see this all-female pay-per-view that WWE was actually having. It was refreshing, and it was something that I had hoped would continue annually. But sadly, it doesn't look like it's happening, and it doesn't look like it was ever like an annual plan for them to have. Like, there was even people who apparently behind the scenes said that they felt like an all-female pay-per-view wouldn't ever sell out, which led to legend Mickie James crafting Empower for NWA. And I'll get back to that in a minute, but either way, WWE could very well have brought back Evolution in the place of Payback and Fastlane, because it's abundantly clear that even for SummerSlam, you only book 2 women's matches and have 6 men's matches that could very well, like, you could move to either any other place in the card or just not have it all. There are other women's programs that deserve that spot or 2 when it comes to SummerSlam, but you're not giving it to them in the second biggest pay-per-view of the year. Why? This is the reason why people clamor for an Evolution or clamor for an Empower, because stuff like this happens, and then you wonder why we always have to tweet women's wrestling matters and hashtag women's wrestling, because it's abundantly clear that people in power still don't see the value in prioritizing it. And I would hate to think that Evolution was just created as a means to give us something in the place of Crown Jewel, which at one point in time was an all-male pay-per-view because of laws in Saudi Arabia. But at the same, I would hate that would be the case, but it looks like that was the case. And you gave it to us as a one-off thing, as opposed to keeping it going, because women's rights are always being fought for and always being taken away. So why aren't you just letting us have this one thing that's all female? You have the talent. You have the talent to have another Evolution. You have women's tag team champions. You have women's world champions. You do have NXT and stuff, but you could even have matches. You could even book matches that aren't even for a title for an Evolution. You could do that. There needs to be another all women's event, because clearly we're not being prioritized enough. We aren't clearly being prioritized enough. And it's not fair. I really just want WWE to get it together and understand that the women are not just a side show. We're not just a bathroom break. We're not just the thing to watch to whet your appetite for the next big male match or the next big bloodline match. We are a box office attraction. Our brains are box office attractions. Treat us like it. Put more women behind the scenes and actually listen to them and respect their outputs when it comes to the women and when it comes to the men too, and the ideas that we have with that. Respect us when women of color tell you what's a sensitive topic to discuss and what shouldn't be discussed and what should be explored on television. Listen to us. Prioritize us. The same way you can create a long-term storyline that's lasting over 3 years with the bloodline, do the same thing for the women across the board. Do it. It's not fair. Do it. Give us an Evolution too. And yes, NWA can catch a stray bullet. They can do an Empower too, and do it annually, because women's wrestling is where it's at. Empower weekend sold out. When I went to Empower, this event changed my life, because this taught me that I could have a space in wrestling journalism. This changed my life, because I interviewed so many people for Women's Wrestling Talk that I didn't even think, I was even good enough to do. And TK, God bless her, whose birthday is tomorrow, like, shout out to her. She allowed me to show what I could do when it comes to interviewing wrestlers at that event. The empowering atmosphere you couldn't buy and get anywhere else. And I'm sure it was the same thing for Evolution too. Why would you only relegate that to one event in 2021 or one event in 2019? Why? Don't you believe that women deserve to be in power all the time? And yes, you can argue that there are events that all women events that take place in the independents, and that's great. That's fantastic because those independent companies are actually doing the work to put women's wrestling out there and give it the respect that it deserves, even though they may not have the money or the big platform that these larger promotions have. They're still doing that, and big ups to them. But the bigger places should be doing better, and they should be ashamed that they're not. So I said all this to say that for SummerSlam, the women deserve way better than just 2 matches. Way better than just 2 matches. They deserve more. That Battle Royal can be replaced with something else. It really can. It really can. You can replace that Battle Royal with something else. And heck, I could even argue that you could put Ricochet versus Logan Paul on a Raw. I would even argue that and replace that with a women's match. I know that's probably the unpopular thing to say because Logan Paul, only headlines the big pay-per-views and stuff like that. But since they've been going back and forth with each other on a Monday Night Raw, move that to a Monday Night Raw and put that in the space where you're about to put Becky and Trish and put Becky and Trish in SummerSlam. I don't care. But women's wrestling deserves better than this. It really does. And I just wanted to spend my time during this special segment talking about it. So now that I'm finished talking about the women at SummerSlam and what happened with that, hopefully we can continue to do better and evolve a little bit better. But yeah, I'm just going to move on to my SummerSlam predictions in the space where I would normally say what's Steph liked in wrestling this week. But yeah, we're going to move to the predictions. So, SummerSlam is taking place Saturday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on Peacock, and it's going to emanate from Detroit, Michigan at the Ford Field. And big ups to all of my podcast friends who are going. It's awesome. So, yeah, I'm going to predict the women's matches first. Now, like I said in my segment earlier, I feel like if Asuka doesn't take advantage of the fact that Bianca and Charlotte are very focused on destroying each other, then that would just be a huge disservice to her. So I'm going to predict that. Actually, I'm going to make 2 predictions. I'm going to predict that number 1, Asuka could retain, and number 2, that Charlotte could very well win because she is getting close to being titled Mrs. SummerSlam, because at every SummerSlam she tends to win titles all the time since she's been called up to the main roster. So Charlotte could win and Asuka could win and Bianca could very well chase, and it would still be entertaining. So if Bianca lost at SummerSlam, it wouldn't hurt her, but then it would still smart just a little bit, considering the first SummerSlam that she participated in, she lost in 26 seconds to Becky. But yeah, I really feel that Asuka could retain her title, but then there's also a greater chance that Charlotte could very well win that title too. But I just don't want Asuka to sort of just be kicked off to the side after holding this title for, only so long, and then Charlotte and Bianca are here and they're just being all alpha womany, and then they just forget about her. So yeah, that's my prediction for that. I'm saying Asuka, but then Charlotte too. So yeah. My other prediction, of course, we have Ronda Rousey versus Shayna Baszler in an MMA rules match. I am probably the most excited about this match simply because it's MMA rules, and because these women are at the top of their game when it comes to MMA fighting, like I want them to destroy each other in the best way possible. Like I low-key want there to be bones broken. I just like if you gonna do an MMA fight, do an MMA fight, okay? If y'all gonna make this like UFC, make it like UFC. This is what I want, okay? I really love the segment that they had on Monday Night Raw when they were telling the story of their friendship and how Shayna felt like a lot of what she was putting into the friendship for Ronda Rousey, Ronda wasn't putting into it for her. And they were even brought to tears talking about each other because you could see that they really love each other. They came up together doing the MMA thing, but clearly Ronda Rousey, revolutionized women's bantamweight wrestling when it comes to not wrestling, MMA mixed martial arts fighting. When it comes to the UFC, there wasn't a women's division in the UFC until Ronda. And I feel like we tend to forget that as wrestling fans because people just tend to talk about, oh, well, she's not that great on the mic and all this other stuff, and she's not that great in the ring. But you do have to remember that the reason why she was in wrestling is because she always loved wrestling. She always respected it. And because of her star power when it comes to UFC, there was a point where she was undefeated. Okay. Let's not forget that. So it's just like, seeing her go up against her fellow horsewoman who helped her train, helped her, get better and lived with her on her ranch and stuff. Like this is going to be the stuff of legend, and I hope that it's something that they allow for these women to kind of just create and just make better on their own. I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited about this match. But I'm predicting that Shayna Baszler is going to win simply because she's been smoking Ronda on the microphone here lately. And also because of the fact that I just feel like she has the most to prove. She wants to prove that she is more than just, Ronda Rousey Jr. She wants to prove that she doesn't have to stand in the shadow of her super world famous friend. She wants to be the monster that we know her to be. So I'm predicting that Shayna Baszler will win this MMA rules match. But I'm really excited about it. So those are my predictions for the two women's matches on the SummerSlam card, even though they could change it. Because cards are subject to change, and I would hope that it would be changed on behalf of the women. But yeah, I talked about that. So we're just gonna move on. When it comes to this match, Ricochet versus Logan Paul. Wow. I'm really excited that this is happening. But like I said earlier, I really feel like this could be on a Raw instead of a SummerSlam. Um, they have created really viral moments from Royal Rumble up until even now. And it's clear that they have mutual respect for each other outside of the whole wrestling kayfabe of it all. But honestly, Logan Paul, in character wise, he is such a good heel that he really is getting under Ricochet's skin to a point that we're seeing, a more intense level of Ricochet that we've never seen. And then Logan Paul took it a step further Monday by saying, it's going to be mad embarrassing for your girl to announce me as the winner. And he didn't have to pull Samantha Irvin into that, who is one of the greatest ring announcers of all time at this point. He didn't have to do that. So I really hope that Ricochet really does beat up Logan Paul and lets him know, like, this is my world and you're just living in it. Like, I really just need for Ricochet to really like pipe up, not only for himself, but definitely for my girl Samantha, because I love her and she's amazing. And they're an amazing couple, and I just don't want Logan Paul to just be disrespectful and all the other stuff. Like Logan Paul is a great wrestler. I'm not gonna hold you. Like, he is a good wrestler for somebody who only just started this last year. For him to go on to have all these high profile matches, it's commendable. Really, it's really commendable. But I really feel like he's met his daddy's drunk when it comes to Ricochet. Okay, like Ricochet is really decorated in that ring. He can wrestle with you either way, whether it comes to high flying or the mat wrestling. He can really do it all. So I'm predicting Ricochet is gonna win. Ricochet is definitely gonna win, but Logan Paul is definitely gonna try his hardest to win and probably hit some shenanigans. But either way, Ricochet is definitely gonna win this match. On to the next match. We have the SummerSlam Battle Royal, which here again, why? Um, there haven't been any implications put on this Battle Royal. Nobody knows why it's here or what it means or why it's been booked, but so far, the participants are LA Knight, everybody's favorite. Sheamus, of course, from the Brawling Brutes. Tommaso Ciampa, Shinsuke Nakamura, which probably makes sense as to why the two of them actually fought on Raw this past Monday. And the Alpha Academy's Otis and Chad Gable. Now, for this one, I don't necessarily have a prediction, but you know, I would love it if LA Knight won. If LA Knight won, that would be really cool. Simply just to give him something that he can, brag about, I guess, and so people can just yell for him and cheer for him because people love him so much. But I would even argue for Chad Gable to win because the match that he gave Gunther after the 5-minute challenge, well, during the 5-minute challenge and after the 5-minute challenge on Raw was really good. Like, Chad Gable is really making the absolute best of his time when it comes to him being a part of the Alpha Academy with Otis and with Maxine Dupree. Like, he's a really good wrestler, and he is somebody that you should keep your eyes on because this man is an Olympic athlete, and he can go toe to toe with the best of them. Like, don't forget the work that he had going on with Jason Jordan and American Alpha and NXT. Okay, like they were fantastic together. And ever since he sort of had to, find his own way when it comes to him wrestling, not only as a single star, because remember Shorty G, um, and then now with him being Chad Gable with the Alpha Academy, and him transferring from heel to face again, it's just been amazing. Like he really is a great wrestler. Anytime you can take it to Gunther, it's great. So I feel like maybe he should have another opportunity for the IC title at some point. That is, if Gunther keeps it against Drew McIntyre. But I would argue that maybe he could win the Battle Royal. So my two predictions are LA Knight, yeah, and Chad Gable for the Battle Royal. But here again, this is hoping if it's not just completely scrapped for a women's thing, which I would hope. But yeah, so now we have this one. We have Cody Rhodes, our American Nightmare, versus Brock Lesnar 3. Now, Brock Lesnar is somebody who you could argue could be labeled Mr. SummerSlam simply because ever since he's been on SummerSlams, he's been winning and giving you like a moment and stuff. Even though he did lose last year to Roman Reigns, he still gave us a moment with that tractor and the fact that he lifted up the ring and tried to kill everybody on the floor. He still gave us a moment with that. And yeah, Brock and Cody have just been fighting each other back and forth ever since WrestleMania, just like, even after WrestleMania, just like Trish and Becky, right? So with this in mind, this is their third go round fighting each other. There isn't a stipulation with it, excuse me, and there aren't any implications. It's just that Cody Rhodes said that after SummerSlam, he wants to end this rivalry. So we don't know exactly how it's going to end. But it low-key makes me feel like, number one, Cody Rhodes has a little bit of a death wish. Because, Brock Lesnar, for as much as he gets on my nerves, especially when it comes to black champions, he's a monster of a man. He is a man who butchers his own meat, okay, and has a restaurant where he could probably cut his own meat, barbecue it himself, and eat it himself. Okay, this is a man's man. So why does Cody feel the need to keep throwing himself at this man's feet like this? It's really scary, but Cody Rhodes is nothing if not courageous. So he's going to try his best. And I'm going to predict that Cody Rhodes is going to win because he's Cody and he's trying to get through all of these hard times. And Brock Lesnar is definitely a hard time. So I'm predicting it's going to be Cody. Cody's going to win, but Brock Lesnar is definitely going to give us a couple of moments where we're going to wonder if Cody is alive. So yeah, that's just how I feel about that. Cody Rhodes is ultimately going to win though. And hopefully at some point he'll get back in the graces of life and be able to challenge Roman Reigns for that title that his dad never won. Please. But yeah, just watch the documentary and you'll understand how I feel. But yeah. Then, of course, we have Gunta. Shout out to Dwayne Allen of the Wrestling Realm podcast. He says Gunta like with his whole soul. Um, Gunther versus Drew McIntyre for the Intercontinental Champion. Now, this is going to be a hoss fight, a barn burner, everything, all of the things this match is going to be. But I'm predicting that Gunther is going to win. And Drew McIntyre might challenge him again, and then we'll get another um match, another championship match. But I'm definitely predicting that Gunther is going to win because he has already surpassed Macho Man Randy Savage's record for the IC title, and I believe he's on his way, if not has already broken the Honky Tonk Man's record. I can't remember right now, but I really do hope that he continues to elevate the title the way that he elevated the NXT UK championship as well. Hopefully he can continue to do that, but that's not saying that Drew McIntyre doesn't have a chance either. Like, both of these men are of the European strong style. And honestly, you could have booked this match in NXT UK and it would have been like a scene stealer for sure. But I just feel that Gunther isn't ready to let go of that title yet. I feel like he is going to win ultimately, but either way, they're going to destroy each other. So I'm predicting that Gunther will still keep that title and continue to break all the records. So big ups to these two though, because they're amazing. And then, of course, we have the World Heavyweight Championship rematch between Finn Balor of the Judgment Day and Seth friggin' Rollins. Looking at this picture and him and Seth Rollins yelling like this reminds me of me watching him and Becky on Family Feud, Celebrity Family Feud. It was really funny if you haven't watched it. But yeah, this is kind of a hard one to predict simply because every time Seth has fought Finn here lately, he's been winning due to either, a hiccup or a mess when it comes to Damian Priest and the Money in the Bank briefcase or whatever. He's just been winning, back and forth because Seth really wants to be that workhorse champion, that the WWE Universe, he feels the WWE Universe doesn't get when it comes to Roman Reigns. He really wants to be that, and I commend him for that, absolutely. But Finn this is something that he's just not letting go at all. He is really bitter and really angry at the idea that this man, really ruined his opportunity to be at the top of the mountain all those years ago when he injured him at SummerSlam. It's really a full circle moment here that these two are fighting at SummerSlam. When it comes to yet again another big title, because years ago when Finn got called up to the main roster, he had the opportunity to win the Universal Championship against Seth Rollins, only having to relinquish the title due to his shoulder injury the next night. And ever since then, he wasn't put in the main event spot ever again, much to the chagrin of a lot of fans, including myself, because we saw, his first NXT run. He was that dude for a long time. And of course, he was that dude in Japan from what I, heard, because of course I didn't see it take place. But from what I heard, he was that dude in Japan. So it's just like, for him to never have gotten an opportunity to stand at the top of the mountain, that irked him. He has a giant chip on his shoulder. So Finn has this opportunity to take this big title off of Seth Rollins again at another SummerSlam. I hate to do this to my boy Seth, but I'm predicting that Finn Balor is going to win. He might win due to a shenanigan from the Judgment Day, but, I low-key feel like they're probably building the Judgment Day to hold all the things, all the gimmies and all the gold because of, you got Dom with the North American title from NXT, you got Rhea with her title, and then you have Mr. Money in the Bank Damian. I feel like that's going to be an interesting story to play with everybody having all of the things and whether or not Damian would cash in on Finn or try to cash in on Roman or maybe even try to cash in on Carmelo. I hope he doesn't. But yeah, like it would just be really interesting to see what would happen with all of the goodies in one faction again. And Judgment Day has been working its way up to that point. But, you know, I just feel like it's a lot deeper than that for Finn. He really does want to snatch this away from Seth because he felt like Seth snatched everything away from him. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see, but I'm predicting that Finn Balor will win and be the new champion, but he will still have to keep his head on the swivel because his buddy Damian has the Money in the Bank briefcase holding over his head. Hee hee. Yeah. That's just how I feel about that one. I feel like it's Finn. And finally, what I'm more than sure will be the main event, we have Roman Reigns, the Tribal Chief, versus Jey Uso, fighting for the undisputed WWE Universal Champion and the mantle of the Tribal Chief of the family. The thing that interests me about this match is the fact that when they talked about the terms under which they would be fighting this match at SummerSlam, it was supposed to be under tribal combat rules. And they weren't supposed to touch each other, from what I assume, and they weren't supposed to fight each other. So why is it that last week we had Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa beating up on Jey Uso and breaking the rules? Because after they discussed the terms and of course they dapped up and then touched foreheads, which here again felt very specific to their culture, and I respect that. You know, they respected each other, and then Roman had to stop Solo from beating him up and giving him the Samoan spike and stuff. Like, I thought they had an understanding that they wouldn't be fighting each other or touching each other until tribal combat. But they broke that rule. But then something that I also found interesting was after they talked about the deal and they shook on it, when he left the ring, you know, after Jay had beat up on Solo, Paul Heyman was crying to him and saying, "My tribal chief, how did he do?" And Roman was like, he's not supposed to be talking to the elders. He's not supposed to be talking to the elders. So with this happening, with this match taking place in Detroit, does this mean that some of the elders will show up? Does this mean the elders will be there to enforce the rules? Like, what is going to happen here? Like, are we going to see more ancestral, more, you know, Samoan things infiltrated throughout the match so we can see more of their culture? Like, are we going to see that? Like, I'm really interested in this. And I'm scared to even try to predict it because it's just Roman is Roman. And he even said Friday, like, I'm always going to be Roman Reigns. And that's true because he's been propositioned to be the face of the company after John Cena for years now. And we've seen that. We've fought against it. We've accepted it. We've fought against it again. And now we're accepting it again. It's just a back and forth. But Jey Uso really has a bug up his butt. It's like they beat up and destroyed Jay's best friend, which is his twin brother, Jimmy. They separated him from his twin brother and then tried to gaslight him and blame him for it as if it's his fault. He's upset and now he's got to get them, like he always says. I got to get you now. Like he says that all the time. So if he wants to take away the championship, make Roman pay, and then take away his tribal chiefdom because he feels like he can lead the family a whole lot better, he has a really good case for it. Because he wouldn't treat his family disrespectfully the way that Roman Reigns does. Roman just uses them as puppets in his schemes. And then it's like when they ain't got gold and when they're not successful for his bottom line, he'll just throw them away. And that's not fair. That's ugly. That's gross. I'm predicting that Roman Reigns will ultimately win because he always does somehow. And I love Jey Uso, and I would love it if he won because it would be such a huge deal for him to win a big title like that on his own because we only ever saw the Usos as one unit. And Jey is really the closest person, to qualify to beat Roman twice. He's done it twice. But somehow or another, Roman is he's dirty. He's grimy. And it's just hard to bet against someone who's just so dirty and grimy. He broke my heart in April. And if they'll break your heart once, they'll break it again. So yeah, I'm predicting that Roman will still somehow win and come out the victor, but Jey will really try his damnedest. So that's all for my SummerSlam predictions. And yeah, it's a pretty crazy show. So like I said, watch it Saturday. And if you see me sharing clips about it, reshare it, retweet it, re-exit, whatever. Repost it, and of course, post the name of the podcast and stuff on Twitter and on Facebook and Instagram and everywhere else, and just see and just big it up, because this is going to be an insane show. But here again, I'm just hoping that somehow more women will be seen on it, featured on it, and just put on it. So yeah, it's crazy. So with that in mind, I have a couple of announcements to make. So of course, your girl Stephanie is available for bookings. I am a podcast host. I'm a panelist. It's been featured at New York Comic Con, MCM Comic Con in Birmingham, UK, Los Angeles Comic Con, and Black Wrestle Fest. So if you need a panelist to talk about wrestling or women in wrestling, please email me or DM me. And also, if you need a color commentator for your special event, whether it be you need it pre-recorded or you need it, at a live show, email me or DM me at the bottom. And if you need a writer, you can do that too. I can do that as well. I write for Women's Wrestling Talk. So if you want a writer, please email me at hardywrestlingpodcast@gmail.com or DM me on Instagram and X at Queen Steph Hardy. Yeah, I'm a woman of many talents, so I have to put it out there. Yeah, please book your girl. Book your girl. And speaking of bookings, I do have a booking on August the 26th with Spartan Wrestling. I will be on commentary with Luis. Shout out to him, Luis Torres. I can't wait to meet him and everybody at Spartan Wrestling to work as a commentator for them. It's been a long time coming because Spartan Wrestling is also connected to the Belladonna division. So I have been wanting to work, with more promotions in Alabama for the longest. So this definitely is a long time coming. So August 26th, say hi to me, and hopefully you'll be able to hear me on commentary if you're standing outside of the 300 arena. But I am so excited to be back on commentary again, and hopefully you'll hear my voice at more shows throughout the coming months and just in the future, because of course I am trying to be the first Black woman commentator on a major promotion, whether it's WWE, Impact, or Women of Wrestling. So I am working for it. So please book your girl. Also, if you haven't already gone to foryourwear.com to check out the Hardy Wrestling Podcast store, please check that out. And you can buy my merchandise, which celebrates Alabama wrestling legends such as Teddy Long, Kayla Braxton, that I previously mentioned in News and Gossipish, Sensational Sherry, Paul Bearer, Deborah, Fuego del Sol, and AQA. Buy the Alabama Wrestling Fighter t-shirt with the podcast logo on the back. You can also purchase a hoodie available in red and black. So please, buy it, support the brand, support the store. And you can also pick up my Bold and the Bloodline t-shirts to celebrate, of course, the greatest storyline in all of professional wrestling at this point. And you can buy my Beyonce t-shirts, which celebrates the love of Bianca Belair and Montez Ford. Their reality show is set to come out, I guess, relatively soon, hopefully. So if you want to celebrate, Black love in wrestling, you can buy the Beyonce shirt. And like I said, the podcast logo is on the back of both t-shirts. So go on foryourwear.com/Hardy Wrestling Podcast and get you a shirt. They're available in all sizes. So we are definitely friendly to all people of all sizes here. So get your merch, buy it for a friend, get it as a birthday gift, get it as an early Christmas gift, or maybe even a Thanksgiving gift. Either way, buy you a shirt. And of course, if you want to catch more of me in action, you can catch me on Women's Wrestling Talk, the number one women's wrestling show on the planet, on Mondays on the Wow Superheroes, Women of Wrestling Superheroes After Show, hosted by me, Katrina Blake from In Cat We Trust, and Emily May Heller, who you may have seen on NXT television this past Tuesday. Congratulations to her. We sit down and we talk about the weekly all-female show for WoW. And of course, they're creating new episodes and we will be covering those. So please check that out. And also check me out on the SmackDown after show with our editor-in-chief, Dreon Santana. We talk about everything of what's going down on the Blue brand, and it's pretty cool. So please check it out and help Women's Wrestling Talk continue to grow. So yeah, those are all the places where you can find me and catch me. And of course, under the screen, you can follow this podcast on Instagram at Hardy Wrestling Podcast and on X/Twitter at Hardy Wrestle Pod. And you can listen to this show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and everywhere else you listen to podcasts. And you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with the logo that you see in the corner over there. It's the Hardy Wrestling Podcast, and subscribe. I have over 200 subscribers now, but I would like for it to grow more and more. So continue to support the brand and continue to support me in my wrestling career wherever you see me, because I might pop up anywhere. And thank you guys for being understanding of my hiatus, but now I'm back. So hopefully I'll have more wrestling content for you guys and just continue to be the positive example in wrestling that you guys need, and being the safe space that you guys need in wrestling as well. So I hope you guys are having a marvelous week, taking care of yourselves and your mental health and your emotional health, because I know there is a lot going on in the world, but here again, we have to try and show up as our best selves each and every time. And even though life might throw its curveballs at you like it did to me last week, you do have to remember, lean on your support system. You're not alone. Please know that you are not alone in this world. There are people who care about you and love you. And know that you are definitely worth investing time into. You are worth it. All right? Okay. So with that in mind, this has been the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl, Stephanie Hardy. And until next time, bye, y'all.